digestion starts with your smell. So smelling your food, like the moment you start to smell the food, it actually primes the nervous system to start your stomach to start creating stomach acid. So when someone says like pray before you eat or take some deep breaths before you eat, yeah, we're trying to get you to relax and enjoy your meal, but we're also trying to get you to smell more, because that action of smelling actually starts a lot of the digestive enzyme release and the acid release. So that starts, you start chewing, there's the mechanical breakdown of the food, but there's also enzymes, mostly amylase in your mouth, which is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. And that starts to break down the food as it goes down your esophagus into your stomach. Then in your stomach, this is a really cool organ that most people, I don't know, just never think about probably, but it's like it's a giant acidic sac.
If you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. It's a little red button. You punch that, and it's going to notify you every time we put out a new episode that can help you improve your bone health. And then also, if you haven't done so already, head over to BoneCoach.com, sign up for the free 7-day Osteoporosis Kickstart. That's going to walk you through everything you need to be doing right now to get on the path to improvement and stronger bones. After you do those two things, go ahead and press play on this episode, and I'll see you inside. Welcome to this episode of the BoneCoach Show. Joining us today to explore osteoporosis and gut health and the little known fatty acid affecting bones, gut, and whole body health is Steven Wright. Steven Wright is a health engineer, Kalish Functional Medicine Institute graduate, and gut health specialist. He spent close to $400,000 overcoming his own health challenges using everything from Western medicine to shamans. Steven is the founder of healthygut.com, and he lives in Boulder, Colorado with his wife, Shay, and their 2 dogs. Steven, welcome to the show.
Kevin, thanks for having me, man.
I'm looking forward to this. Let's start out with how you got into having this passion around helping people heal their guts, where that all started, and how and why you created healthygut.com.
Yeah, like most people's journeys, I had my own problems and I had to go outside of the normal route to heal those problems. And that's the short version of it. I was somebody who was nicknamed the gas man by my family. I was so smelly. I had like just a lot of IBS and bloating my entire life. Looking back, now there were fluctuations in it, and it got worse after certain things, such as a lot of antibiotics for my acne in high school, and then worse after college, which was a ton of stress, beer and pizza. And then I was in a consulting role. It was like high stress, big four accounting firm for Fortune 100 companies. And at that point in time, everything that I would eat would bloat me. So it didn't matter if I was doing chicken and salad or Chicago deep dish pizza. I was in Chicago at the time. I would just immediately swell up, and then I would have like stabbing knife pains. And so this is a type of IBS called visceral hypersensitivity. Not everybody has it, but it's like a super sensitization of the nerves in the gut. And so if you've ever had that experience, like there's only one thing you want and the only one thing you could focus on, and that's like basically farting. Like you need the gas to relieve the pressure off the nerves. And so I would essentially crop dust my coworkers, unfortunately, I'm sorry guys, every day. And they complained to my boss, probably as they should have. And so my boss called me in and was like, hey, you're the smelly guy, you got to handle this. And so that was I call it like the 4x4 to the face for me, because I had plenty of other options I could have chosen to like try to figure this out, but I needed a lot of embarrassing experiences to really seek help. And so when I did seek help, all the Western doctors, were like, here's all the antibiotics you want, here's all the Metamucil, whole grains, and those things didn't work. And so luckily I had a good friend, Jordan, from college, who had celiac disease, and he was having his own struggles with the gluten-free diet. He had found this other diet called the Specific Carbohydrate Diet. This was also 2008, 2009, so the internet was not what it is now. And he convinced me after a long night on the toilet to get on this diet, start making all my food from scratch. And within literally a few days of doing this, like cutting out a bunch of basically all processed food, cutting out a bunch of different carbohydrates, 50% of my pain was gone, like literally in days. This is something I've had for like literally my whole life in my experience. And this it like awoken a power in me. Like I had basically given away all my power. And then it was like, holy cow, I can affect how my body feels on a regular basis. I don't have to accept their facts as my life sentence. And so that mixed with a bunch of anger and shame, I was like, I can figure this out. I can reverse engineer this. I don't have any medical training, but I have an engineering background, and my schooling is just as hard as their schooling. And all my schooling was focused on solving complex problems. So why can't I figure out this complex system? And so that's what started the very first iterations of healthy gut, which were called Specific Carbohydrate Diet Lifestyle, or SCD Lifestyle. Lots of blogging, and then I'm just one of those people where I can't stop digging. Like, I just got to know. And so, I just kept going deeper into nutrition, and then supplements, and then functional medicine, and then nervous system, and it just keeps going.
That was actually one of the inroads that I came across you many, many years ago, was through the SCD. It was like an SCD blog or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the specific carbohydrate diet for just a minute. What is that? Why would someone use it? Why did you, someone who had, smelly gas, and I'm sure there are people listening right now that have chronic digestive distress for long periods of time. It's causing issues with their family or the environment or their relationships, and they may be self-isolating or something because of that. Why did you have near immediate resolution in those issues when you started implementing this protocol?
Yeah. So this is one of the, if not the first sort of digestive diet, actually, is a specific carbohydrate diet. So it actually comes out of the 1920s. Everybody who was born with celiac disease back then died. And these two doctors at Vanderbilt University were like, how do we stop these kids from dying? And they basically just trialed all these different foods, and they figured out which foods allowed them to thrive and which foods would cause more GI upset, and then they would go on to have malnutrition and die. And so the grouping of food that they settled on was really basically almost free of complex carbohydrates and disaccharides. And it was basically focused mostly on monosaccharide foods that were heavy in that. And so it became known later as the specific carbohydrate diet. That was Dr. Sidney Haas. And then later on, Dr. Elaine, or nutritionist Elaine Gottschall, actually kind of updated it and modernized it in the 90s, the late 80s, and kind of renamed it after it worked for her daughter who had ulcerative colitis. And so they didn't know anything. They didn't know gluten back then. They didn't know seed oils. They didn't know nothing back then. They didn't know probiotics. They just were literally like, what works, what doesn't work, what works, what doesn't work. And so I think it's amazing that they settled on this idea that essentially these group of people who have this celiac disease, who have this IBS, they don't tolerate complex carbohydrates. And so if we now run that through our scientific lens of what we know in 2024, we know that if you have intestinal inflammation, you're going to lose the brush border enzymes that break down complex and disaccharide carbohydrates. So basically, if you have celiac disease, which is the gold standard of celiac diagnosis, is a biopsy that shows your villi are like blunted. They're like shag carpet that got cut off. Those shag carpet in the inside of your small intestine, that's where they release brush border enzymes. The final breakdown of all carbohydrates are these brush border enzymes. And so what they did is they developed this diet that ended up being for people with intestinal inflammation who didn't have enough enzymes to actually break down their food. And then when you remove those foods, you literally stop the bugs that eat those foods that are not being properly broken down by your own body. They get passed further down to bugs, and you might hear this now called SIBO or SIFO or different types of dysbiosis. And that's just the same as if you threw sugar on the floor in your kitchen and you're like, I don't understand why there's ants. Like, where do these ants keep coming? Like, how come there's ants in my kitchen? It's like, dude, if you put food in nature grows to meet the demand of the food that's available. And that's a lot of what's happening in a lot of different gut cases. And in this situation, if you remove the food for that nature, a lot of that fermentation and gas process that's happening from those bugs, it just literally goes away very quickly.
Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I want to take one more minute to talk about if you are somebody who was newly diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, and you're at a point where you're stressed, you're worried, you're overwhelmed, you have no idea where to start or how to get started getting confident in your plan. I want to tell you about the Stronger Bone Solution Program. Over 5,000 people have come through this Stronger Bone Solution program, and it walks you through the exact process you need to fill in the missing pieces, uncover critical things in your plan that you may not be aware of, and help you make modifications, adjustments, and tweaks to get you to the place where you're building stronger bones. I want you to get confident in your plan so that you can focus on living life and enjoying the life that you deserve with the people you love most. So if that's where you want to be, head over to bonecoach.com/apply and apply for our Stronger Bone Solution program right now. I'm Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I want to see you inside this program. I want to help you get on the path to improvement in stronger bones. Hope to see you inside very soon. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, that's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And let's talk about, why is gut health so important for bone health? There are a couple other things related to this we're going to talk about, but primarily because our audience has osteopenia, has osteoporosis, they've got some kind of bone loss, they're trying to build stronger bones. That's an important piece for them. So let's tie in the gut health and bone health piece. And there are some other specific things we can chat about in a second.
Yeah, well, this is, I mean, you've definitely been studying this longer and harder than I have, but my understanding, if you had to say there's like a couple different factors that are really important for bone health. One is probably stimulus from the environment. One has got to be like your building blocks, your actual nutrient status. And at least one other component appears to be the generalized state of your gut, and especially the microbiome, the health of that microbiome, because my review of the literature suggests that the microbiome is sending basically signals to, and again, I'm trying to get up to speed on this as much as I can. But if we have osteoblasts, which are making bone, and we have osteoclasts, which are breaking down bone, a microbiome that's dysregulated or has been aged. Because here's the crazy thing: as we age, we lose microbiome diversity, and we have a higher chance of microbiome dysbiosis. And so those are the conditions that will then send signals to the osteoclast to basically eat up more bone faster. And then in mice and rat studies, they've done some really cool research with probiotics and with butyrate, where they literally either mimic full hormone loss of, like, so they just put them right into like full hormone loss, and then they give them probiotics and they can actually prevent the bone decay. And then they do these antibiotic trials where they give them butyrate or other compounds that are gut specific, and without the protection from the antibiotics, with the butyrate compounds, they start to lose their bone, and they never quite get their bone back, even though the other control mice do. And so it's this really cool thing where, like, every nutrient you would need, so all the calcium or the magnesium or the boron or whatever you need for your bones, literally has to go through your gut. So you have to liberate those minerals and those nutrients from your food. It doesn't matter if you eat the best wild caught salmon or local everything, you like pet your kale before you eat it. Like, if you don't actually get the nutrients out of that food that you work so hard for, because you don't have good enzymes or good stomach acid or whatever, you won't have the nutrients for the bones. But then also later down in your gut is your microbiome, and that microbiome is sending signals 24/7 about whether or not you should keep more bone or lose more bone, and what's the generalized health of the entire human.
Yeah. So all of this, as you're talking through this, people need to understand that digestion starts in your mouth, right? When you're actually chewing your food, there's that mechanical breakdown of the food where you're actually chewing it, you're stimulating, different enzymes, your stomach acid, all that kind of stuff. And just like you said, you have to be able to liberate those minerals and those nutrients and actually be able to absorb them. If you don't have good stomach acid, you're not going to be able to extract those nutrients from your food. The calcium, magnesium, iron, B12, all those important nutrients. If you don't have good stomach acid, that's going to affect the release of enzymes further down. Maybe you could talk through this digestive process and at each phase, what's taking place and why we need to optimize it, how we can optimize that.
Yeah. So digestion, my perspective on it and what the biology says, digestion starts with your smell. So smelling your food, like the moment you start to smell the food, it actually primes the nervous system to start your stomach to start creating stomach acid. which you just talked about is pretty critical. So when someone says like pray before you eat or take some deep breaths before you eat, yeah, we're trying to get you to relax and enjoy your meal, but we're also trying to get you to smell more because that action of smelling actually starts a lot of the digestive enzyme release and the acid release. So that starts, you start chewing. There's the mechanical breakdown of the food, but there's also enzymes, mostly amylase in your mouth, which is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. And that starts to break down the food as it goes down your esophagus into your stomach. Then in your stomach, this is a really cool organ that most people, I don't know, just never think about probably. But it's a giant acidic sac, and it's so harsh in there that you would feel it almost like burning in a way, because a lot of times you want the stomach to be around when it's fully acidified with the food in there, you want it to be below 2, so around a 1.5 or so. And Coca-Cola is around 2.4. Apple cider vinegar, Coca-Cola are about 2.4 on the pH scale. And the pH scale is not linear, it's logarithmic. So 1.4 or 1.5, which is where we want to be, is actually a logarithm. It's a whole 10x stronger. It's much closer to battery acid, which I think is right around 1. So it's pretty crazy how acidic it gets in there. And that's really important because number one, it's killing any microbes that are coming in through the air, the water, the food that are, that might try to hurt us. It's also liberating, like you said, these minerals at a microscopic level. So I like the analogy I have for stomach acid is without stomach acid, think of a flower that's kind of bound up. It's not getting the sunlight and the water. It's not opening. At a 3D level, what acid does is it opens up the meat or the nuts or the vegetables that you eat such that enzymes can come in and cleave off the nutrients and bind to the nutrients. And so if you don't have enough stomach acid, you're never really opening the flour or the nutrients of your meal, and you're not allowing the enzymes and everything else to do their job. So you're right. If we look at studies for low stomach acid, they have low, over time, they'll lose calcium, magnesium, all these things. So after that, we jump into the small intestine, and this is where you have most of your enzyme action. So you have your pancreatic enzymes, which are lipase and amylase and proteases. And then you have your brush border enzymes, which I spoke about a little bit ago, that are also mixing in there and finally just breaking everything down to these really, really little chunks, these microscopic chunks, because that's what we need. We need, B12 over here, we need calcium over here, we need magnesium over here, we need amino acids and these really small peptide chains. Otherwise, it misses its little window of absorption and it travels deeper into the small intestine. And when that happens, that's where we get into that, are you putting sugar on the floor in your kitchen experience. Below that is our microbiome. So the majority of our microbiome is actually at the end of our small intestine and the beginning of our large intestine. Most people don't know that. They think it's like at the end of the chain. It's not. And so that's where the microbiome is. That's where all the activity is happening, where your bugs literally take what's left over. This is the fermentable fibers, the bright colors of your food. They take the rest of that and they turn that into more nutrition for themselves as well as for us. And those signaling molecules, that's where short chain fatty acids and butyrate happens. And that's where those become these signaling mechanisms for the rest of our body that are very important for health or ill health. And then finally, we extract some more electrolytes and some more water, and then we put it in the toilet.
What are short chain fatty acids and butyrate? And then why do we need them?
Yeah. So, nutrition nerds are sometimes really inventive and sometimes they're very literal. So short chain fatty acids are literally just fatty acids that are real short. Most people have heard of MCTs now. They're just like medium lengths of fatty acids. If you're counting them in a microscope, you just like, there's a certain number and then they're short. And so short chain fatty acids are mostly made by the microbiome. You don't really find them else in nature. Like there's microscopic amounts in butter, there's microscopic amounts elsewhere, but they will be destroyed by your stomach acid before they ever get there. And so you have this sort of hippie community between the bugs, where this bug, is like watching the children, and then this bug is like, farming, and this bug is like making the food, and this bug's the cleaner. Like you have this whole ecosystem down there where they pass nutrients off. And one of the big end products is short chain fatty acids, of which there's 6 to 7, depending, maybe more, depending on how you want to characterize them. But the main 3 are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And we need all three, but butyrate is the most anti-inflammatory. It's the most studied and the most systemic, meaning approximately 90% of it is consumed right there in the microbiome by our colonocytes, which are basically the cells of the large intestine. Their metabolism, like their energy production, their mitochondria, everything they do, they want to be butyrate metabolism. But the other 10% goes systemic and it goes all over. You can find studies on asthma and low butyrate, neurodegenerative disease, low butyrate, heart attacks, low butyrate, and then of course bones, low butyrate. So pretty much anywhere we look, if you have a chronic disease, there's a component of low butyrate.
Okay. So what are the ways that we can, what are the ways we can get butyrate into our system?
So the main way, like the idealized way that we would hope it works, is that we are eating a lot of fermentable fibers and vegetables and fruits and starchy tubers. All of those food groups contain a lot of fermentable product in them that we don't use it anywhere else in the body. It goes down there to the microbiome, and the microbiome creates a ton of butyrate from it. We are now in a state where research suggests there was plenty of times in history where humans had like 50 to 70 or 80 grams of fiber per day. We're now in a place where like, even if I did 80 grams, I would be doubled over in extreme pain and bloating would be terrible. Now we're in a state where we're trying to get to 30, like 30 to 50 would be like the ideal range. Most of us are like at 10, maybe less, especially if we're doing some sort of elimination diet for GI distress or for other chronic diseases. And we end up doing things like low FODMAP or low histamine or paleo autoimmune, but we don't bring in starches anymore. These diets end up becoming, on accident, I think, just due to ignorance, extremely low fermentable fibers that end up causing dysbiosis and low butyrate. And so we got to shift the conversation back the other way, because we are, in my opinion, doing harm at this moment in time if we stay on these diets longer than 3 months and we don't support the microbiome.
And, I know carnivore is a big topic now for people, right? So maybe talk about the impact. I mean, it's kind of understandable that now you don't have fiber in a carnivore diet too. And yeah, some people short term can see relief and improvements from doing that. And it could be maybe a short term tool, but longer term, you don't have the fiber, you're not getting the butyrate. What are the other impacts, that can come from that?
Well, in general, the farther you get away from what is considered kind of like diets that have assisted populations at a healthy level. So the more you get to the fringe, I would say one end of the fringe is carnivore, the other end of the fringe is vegan. The farther you get away from some version of moderation and I'm talking not Western diet, I'm talking like healthy, whole food like diets, the farther on those spectrums, you are risking several things. And I would actually call both of those spectrums elimination diets, because you're essentially concentrating all your nutrients and your anti-nutrients, as well as your toxin load, through one type of food substrate. That might feel fantastic for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. But like I said, sure, that you can talk all kinds of cool stuff about carnivore and like the tons of nutrients that you might get from all this animal product in these nose to tail eating. And that's true. But you're also aggregating all the toxins from those animals as well. And you're also, any process related to the microbiome, you're changing it drastically. And so I think you're creating dysbiosis over there. On the vegan side, you're creating micronutrient deficiencies. That is absolutely known. And it's absolutely well documented that your brain is going to slow down, your bones are going to be worse. Like, there's significant issues on the vegan side. And so you and I have been around long enough to see several fads. This is just another fad. And there's an important thing here, which is that I acknowledge that for many people, it feels wonderful because it is a version of an elimination diet. It's the most extreme. And you are killing off what is probably a very dysbiotic microbiome. You're cleaning up the sugar in the kitchen, right? There's no more sugar going into the kitchen. Like, you're totally changing things down there. And that's probably really healthy for like 8 weeks. And then you probably should start thinking about what's going to happen next. because long term, there's never been a vegan society and there's never been a carnivore society, and there never will be, because both diets have extreme issues when it comes to long-term health.
So moving beyond just food to support good, healthy gut, good, healthy, overall health, good, healthy bone health, and we get into supplementation, right? I know there are tools that we can use to help improve our gut health. What are some of the tools that you like to see people using when they're focused on improving their gut health?
Well, I have come like a long way. Like I've seen some of the fads, I've been part of some of the fads. And so, for instance, like I was part of like the probiotics are everything. Now I'm like, well, probiotics, like we've taken more probiotics than ever. We have more issues than ever. Clearly, probiotics are not the only thing. Maybe not even the first thing we should focus on. So I've been trying to figure out recently, like, what is the first thing? Like, what are the things that make sense for most people with gut issues? And the things for me are just doing the basics of that organ. So is your stomach acid making enough stomach acid? Do you have enough digestive enzymes, or have you, through aging or through some sort of other injury or something, do you just not make enough enzymes to, doesn't matter how good your autoimmune paleo is, if you don't have enough enzymes, it just doesn't. And then lastly, also, I've been just really focused on butyrate. I think butyrate is the key molecule of the gut. All of my research continues to lead back to butyrate, that there is a connection in almost every part of the body, but also in every layer of the gut. Like everything you might want from the gut, like if you've heard of something called leaky gut syndrome or leaky gut, intestinal permeability, it's not a good thing. And it's associated with bone loss. It's also associated with a lot of other chronic diseases. And I've been trying to unlock that for a long time. And there's lots of complex supplements out there. But one thing we could do is just kind of do an end around and just supplement with butyrate, stabilize the entire gut, and bring the one nutrient that we're struggling to make. And then from there, try to focus on the next layer up, which is that hippie community. Is that gut dysbiosis, can we reformulate it to make it into a healthy microbiome again? And then can you actually get the fermentable matter from your mouth down to the microbiome without having pain, without having constipation, diarrhea, bloating, whatever your joint, whatever it might be. And so from that perspective, I found a lot more success than I ever have in my entire career, is starting at the butyrate level, trying to rebuild the gut from there, from basically the bottom up, has worked a lot better for me than any other approach I've ever seen.
And how much butyrate do we need to support a good, healthy gut?
Everybody's unique because everybody's diet's unique. So like if you have, if you're eating a rice or white potato or sweet potato on a regular basis, like on a daily basis, and you're having some berries and some vegetable matter, like your butyrate status is going to be significantly better than somebody who's not doing those things, who's having just like a handful of blueberries one day and like a little kale in a blender, and then like, oh yeah, potatoes on Fridays. Like their butyrate status is going to be a lot worse. And so for the people who are, number one, you're struggling with like a chronic disease, you're struggling with gut related issues, your need for butyrate is probably going to be more. And then if your diet is just low in fermentable matter, you're going to need probably more supplementation as well. That looks like, for our product, we make, I think, the world's best butyrate product, and we could talk about why. There's a few key differentiators, but for our product, that looks like 3 to 6 pills per day is what most people take to see like significant, like, wow, I noticed something.
So all your research has taken you down this path of butyrate is this key short chain fatty acid for gut health. We need it. And you developed a product. Let's talk about what the product is, why you formulated the way you did, how it's actually working to help people improve their gut health.
Yeah. So butyrate's not a new concept. This is not like some revolutionary idea. It's been around for like a long, like 50 years. Like a lot of people have known about it. There was first generations. I like to talk about it like phones. So like there was first generation flip phones and like walkie-talkie phones and stuff, like Nextels, if people had those back in the day. That was like the first generation of butyrate supplements. They were called sodium butyrate, and the promise of the research has been around for a long time, but the supplementing with those CalMag butyrates and sodium butyrates, for most people, including myself and a lot of clinicians I talked to, they just don't produce. Like the literature says we need this, and then in practice, it just doesn't ever really work as you had hoped. A few years ago, Tributyrin, which is a different form of butyrate, started to make a comeback. It's been around since the 90s. It's a fat molecule with butyric acid bonded to it versus sodium and butyric acid bonded together. But some scientists started working with it, and they figured out that they could do some cool stuff with some enteric capsules. And enteric capsules are like the difference between your first phones and your iPhone 15. So a regular capsule, like a gel cap or a veggie cap, it'll be disintegrated in like 3 to 7 minutes in your stomach. Like it is, like you're swallowing it. If you ever burped pills back up because you took too many, like there's a reason why. Like those pills hit that acid, they start opening. So certain compounds you really need to protect from your stomach, and butyric acid is one of those. There's gastro-resistant pills, and those last about 35 to 45 minutes in your acid. But your food spends 2 hours approximately in that acid state. And so we need a technology that can go much longer. And so that technology is called enteric technology, or enteric capsules, enteric coatings. There's lots of different ones. I was able to find a researcher in Spain who had been focusing his entire life on this, and he had cracked the code on making extremely pure tributyrin and then finding a patent pending enteric capsule to coat it. And so we were able to license his creation, his invention, and bring it over here. And so it really is truly different than any other brand out there due to the tributyrin nature as well as the capsule technology.
Fantastic. So if somebody's trying to incorporate this into their plan, what does that typically look like? Do they have to eat it with their food? Can they take it outside of their food? Are they taking it at every single meal? Are you taking it all at once in one big dose? All that kind of stuff. What are the kind of specifics around it?
Yeah, well, the cool thing is you'd be making it 24/7, so you don't need to take it with your meals. It also has the enteric capsule, which makes it like a no smell. Butyric acid smells like deep vomit. It's like you don't want to smell it. So this capsule like locks it in because it's so good at keeping out moisture and air. And so it's a really small gel cap. Ours is, it's almost like a D3. The size is like a D3 gel cap if you use those. And so a lot of people who are just beginning this, they take it before bed because there's a big line of research around deep sleep numbers and low butyrate. And so some people actually can notice on their Oura ring or their Whoop band that their deep sleep numbers improve. If you're somebody with a loose stools, like I tend to think of like guts kind of like personalities. So like some people's personality goes towards constipation. Some people's personality, their gut goes towards loose stools and diarrhea. If you're on the loose stool diarrhea side, like you can just start loading this stuff up and you'll probably firm up your stools very quickly, and you'll find a number. That number might be 3 per day, might be 4 per day, might be 5 per day, where you're just having like really amazing poops and you're really happy with how things are going. Your pain is down, all those things. On the constipated side, our theory is that these people actually have the worst amount of butyrate. They have the lowest amounts. And so they need to go slower. And so we have them slowly every 3 days introduce a capsule. And then again, they have like some pretty cool spontaneous changes in their gut around 2 to 3 caps per day. And that usually takes them like 8 to 10 weeks. And so because butyrate is almost like magnesium or vitamin D for the body, it's impacting legitimately almost everything in the gut. So it's making your mucous membranes thicker. It's strengthening the tight junctions between your cells. It's making your microbiome more diverse and thicker. It's actually increasing the amount of these antimicrobial peptides that we release that help us with our gut immune system. It's like a weighted blanket for mast cells. Mast cells are what release histamine. And if you're somebody with histamine intolerance, you'll know what that is. But basically it helps soothe the mast cells. It almost everywhere where you look, butyrate is doing something. And so I can't tell you what your family history is, what your current status of your gut is, but it'll help once you hit that right dosage.
Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Bone Coach Show. If you're finding it helpful, please leave a positive rating and review. Hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast or the channel. That lets us help more people and reach and serve more people. And it also lets us know that this is helpful to you on your journey to better health and stronger bones. And then also, right down in the show notes, you can actually find a link to my free Bone Healthy Recipes Guide. That's going to give you access to some amazing and delicious recipes to support your journey to stronger bones. And then also, we have a link to my free Stronger Bones Masterclass in the show notes too. And that is the 3-step process that has helped people in over 1,500 cities around the world get confident in their plan for stronger bones. Over 110,000 people have taken part in this, and it's been really, really helpful for them. And I want you to have free access to it too. So add your name and email right down there in the show notes, get access to that free Stronger Bones Masterclass, and let's get you confident in your Stronger Bones plan today. That's fantastic. Well, I know you have generously given our audience a code for the product is, what's the product name again? It's Tributyrin. I want to make sure I get that right.
Tributyrin-X.
Tributyrin-X, and it's code $15 off and free shipping if you use the code BoneCoach. We're going to link down below in the show notes to this. But I'd love to hear, like, there are products that you probably have never even heard of, or compounds you've never even heard of, or short chain fatty acids that maybe you have heard of, but you didn't know how to apply it into your plan. And this is a fantastic resource that Steven has put together and his company Healthy Gut has put together. So if you were to summarize just the steps of somebody who is looking to improve their gut health, obviously we want to incorporate some butyrate into your plan, but what are the kind of step-by-step pieces that you would go through?
Yeah. So I would say, number one, if you're not having gut related issue, like you don't associate it with, like, I have gut problems, you're like more like I have osteoporosis, or I'm just longevity focused, I would say your goal is to increase the amount of colorful fruits and vegetables that you eat on a regular basis. And don't forget to incorporate starchy tubers. And those are your potatoes and your rice and things like this, because this is the fuel for a healthy microbiome. And when you lose your microbiome, just like you lose your eyes, just like you lose your ovaries, your testes, everything goes downhill. So anything you can do to protect that microbiome by feeding it the food it wants, that's going to help you age. It's going to help you have a better gut and a better life. If you can't tolerate those foods, that means a few things. One of those things means that you probably don't have the enzymes required to break that food down, and you might not have the stomach acid. So you can do an HCl challenge at home. You can do enzyme tests with, like, our product or other products at home to see if it'll help. But at the end of the day, if you've already removed a lot of these foods because they hurt you in some way or fashion, what I would encourage you to do is start with Tributyrin-X, rebuild your gut from that part forward. So you'll be helping heal any sort of intestinal permeability you have. You'll be helping with the microbiome, all these different food reactions, things like that, you'll be helping. And then from there, start building back up. So then check on your enzymes, check on your stomach acid. Meanwhile, you're increasing the foods you're eating. You're having fermentable foods. You're having blueberries every day, or whatever it might be, such that later on in a few months, maybe 6-12 months from now, you can actually cycle back off of the Tributyrin-X and just go through life, with a higher fiber diet.
And for everybody listening, just to summarize again, in terms of the connection between gut health and bone health, there's a major connection between the two. Obviously, your bones are a large reserve of minerals, so you need to be absorbing those minerals and nutrients. If you don't have good stomach acid, if you have blunted villi from celiac disease, or if you have some other chronic digestive distress where you've got loose stools and constipation, there's a good chance there's some absorption issues going on there that have to be addressed. So absorption is a big component of that. Another big component that connects your gut health to your bone health is that 70% of your immune system is in your gut. The cells that break down bone, if we're stimulating that digestive system and the immune system, that's going to speak in the same language as the cells that break down your bone. It's going to increase that osteoclast activity. That's going to reduce your bone density and your bone strength. So we don't want that to happen. We want to resolve those digestive issues, get them in check, and Healthy Gut and Steven Wright's company and Tributyrin-X can help you with that. So again, I'm going to link down to this link in the show notes, and you use code BoneCoach, you'll get $15 off, free shipping. And anything else you want to share, Steven?
No, I think this is awesome to have this conversation, Kevin. And I just hope that, if you have questions about bone health, about the gut health, stuff, reach out to my team, Support a Healthy Gut. We're a company that not only believes in building the best products in the world for our niches that we enter, but also we have health coaches. All of our support staff are certified health coaches of one type or another. So you can call us, you can ask whatever, question you have about if you can try this or if you can't try this. They're also there to help you with the dosing if this was confusing or you're just wondering what's the best way for you. We're very committed to helping people get individualized protocols because we think that's where breakthroughs really happen.
I love that. Well, for everybody listening, you can find all the resources, show notes mentioned over at bonecoach.com. We'll link to this right down below this episode in the podcast or wherever you're watching it. And I want to thank everybody again, including Steven, for your time. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Hope you found that episode helpful and that you enjoyed it. Just one last reminder, if you haven't done so already, head over to bonecoach.com, sign up for your free 7-day osteoporosis kickstart. It's going to tell you everything you need to do to start getting on the path to improvement. Hope you found this helpful. I'm your Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I'll see you soon.